success in the group stage, as awesome as it is in the Olympics, does not necessarily always guarantee success. There's the magic game. The quarterfinal is the magic game. You win your quarterfinal, you're playing for a medal no matter what, right? You win your quarterfinal, Coffey's coming back, right? You're going to maybe get some injured players back. You're going to be able to continue to grow through this tournament. You lose this game, you're out. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a YouTube exclusion version of the Late Sub YouTube exclusion version. Oh, there's another day of a lot of soccer, so we're going to be talking interesting today. I'm your host, Claire Watkins. Match day 3 of the Olympic soccer group stage. We've made it through sort of the big gauntlet of games where you've got, 6 games every single day. We have a quarterfinal set. We have some teams eliminated. We have some teams advanced. We have some drama at the end, and they're moving on to the quarterfinal round. So real quick, going to do just sort of a bigger picture look of the entire field so everyone sort of see how things lay out. And then we're going to jump into some U.S. Women's National Team specific analysis because there's a lot to get into. Another really interesting game from the U.S. So to start, we're just going to talk about who advanced, and then we'll get into sort of what this means for Saturday's games because, no rest for the weary. We go right from Wednesday to Saturday. So Group A is won by France. Now, France was not in first place going into this game, but they do pull out the win in the group stage with a victory over New Zealand. Now, second in Group A, like everyone predicted, is Canada. And so I'm laughing because obviously kind of everyone did predict that before the tournament started. And then it seemed like they had no hope because Canada was docked those 6 points due to the drone cheating scandal. But they go on to go 3 for 3. They win 3 games. And I think one of the interesting things about Canada that sort of went underrated when people were talking about whether the IOC ruling of the 6 docked points were too harsh or too lenient is the fact that those were docked points as opposed to forfeits made all the difference for Canada here because Canada was sort of put in the strange position of they had negative 3 points and then they had 0 points and now they're only on 3 points, but they never went into negative goal differential because they did actually win all of their games. You don't go into negative goal differential if you win your games, right? So instead of having it become a forfeit, which would have cost them 3 goals per game, they were just those docked Olympic points, which means that despite only finishing on 3 points, they also finished on a +3 goal differential, which sent them ahead of every other third place team because, again, you don't usually get to 3 points with a positive goal differential. And it also leapfrogged them over Colombia, who they beat today, because Colombia was naturally sitting on 3 points. And like I said, it's very difficult to do that with a positive goal differential. So France advanced at the top of Group A. Canada advances in second. Colombia does advance in third. New Zealand, thank you so much for your time here. You broke open a wide scandal and you'll be remembered forever for that. Thank you so much. New Zealand has been eliminated. Group B, United States. Fabulous group stage for the United States. They go for 3 for 3 as well. They're the only other team them and Spain are the only other 2 teams to go for 3 for 3. They top the group. Easy sailing for the United States. Germany gets second after a big win over Zambia today. Australia gets third and Zambia gets fourth. Australia goes home. Australia, they shipped 10 goals conceded in their 3 group stage games, and I think that ultimately is what sunk them. They just did not have it on the defensive end in this tournament. They didn't have the offensive firepower to follow it, and then in their third game, they went for a result. They went very conservative for a result, and they didn't quite get it, and I think that obviously sunk them as well. So they do not advance. I think perhaps you could think hard feelings from Australia based on the fact that Canada was sanctioned for cheating, which, again, some people thought that punishment should have gone further, but it was just not Australia's tournament. It was they have some things to figure out. They have a transition probably to go through to come back stronger in Brazil in 2027. And then Zambia, similar as always, wonderful attack. Barbara Banda scores again today. She's 24 years old. She has 10 Olympic goals. They just don't necessarily have the organization and the defense, and that makes it difficult to get results. So that's how Group B shakes out. Group C, Spain, as expected, they lead Group C, 3 wins in 3 games. A little bit tighter wins. They do get a 2-goal cushion in this particular final game against Brazil, but it's a little bit similar score lines than maybe we're used to with them. But the main takeaway for Spain that everyone should be ready for is the fact that Alexia Putellas has scored 2 goals from distance in 2 straight games. As people recall, she was not at her full faculties in the 2023 World Cup that they did win. Spain, again, continues to build. It's like they're not blowing teams away, but the result is just very, very rarely in doubt with Spain. And they're finding kind of these incredible ways to score, even if the system isn't always working. And they rotated heavily today because were already through to the quarterfinals. Japan gets second with a nice big win against Nigeria. Japan is going to be the United States opponent in the quarterfinals. Japan has grown into this tournament really nicely. They have this big turnaround against Brazil in their second game. They are on the front foot always against Nigeria. They seem to be working some things out, so I think they're going to be a formidable quarterfinal opponent. Brazil gets third. They do not have an amazing game today. Marta actually gets ejected with a straight red card, worthy red card. It was a high kick. It was a dangerous play. She leaves in tears. You wonder, oh no, is this all about to fall apart for Brazil? But they do make it, advancing past Australia in goal differential. So they live to fight another day. Brazil does. And hopefully Marta will be able to make a return to the Olympic stage, because it would be a genuine kind of tragedy if that was the way that her international career ended. It was through sort of that red card, but also maybe, I don't know, a little bit fitting to Marta, who always plays with her heart on her sleeve and maybe gets a little bit too hot sometimes and goes in for things with, her full, just full commitment. So I'm happy to see Brazil advance. I think that particular red card for Marta would have been a very sad way for the team to go out. Glad that's not going to be the case. Nigeria is eliminated. So just interesting stuff. It was a really nice group stage. I think things actually ended up being very competitive, which is why so many teams were alive going into the third match day. Obviously, some of the drama with Canada really affects things as well. I'm going to be honest. Here's my real hot take is I'm not sure Canada does go 3 for 3 if they don't have their backs against the wall in every single game of this group stage. And I think that they've really sharpened themselves into something that's going to be difficult to take on in the knockout rounds. They've kind of been playing knockout games ever since they got that point deduction. Australia, I think, was a little bit of a surprise in the other direction. I think we knew that they were not, again, going to be at the height of their powers. They don't have Sam Kerr. They're still in this long process of developing that back line. But again, 10 goals against in the 3 games is really, really tough to swallow, I think, for them, especially with how well they did in the World Cup last year. Japan and Brazil, I think, kind of near Curry. Japan didn't look good for probably the first 3 halves, let's say, or maybe they played fine against Spain, but they don't get the result, and then they look really rough against Brazil until they come back to win 2-1. But like I said, they're growing into this tournament, and I think they could be poised for a long run. Teams that are a little bit more just sort of holding on, I think, would be Colombia and Brazil, and fascinated to kind of see how their quarterfinals work out. But let's focus back on the U.S. here, because they're the main draw, right? They're the headliners here on the late sub. And the U.S. women's national team, they get through this group stage, like I said, 3 for 3. They score the most goals. They've got the highest goal differential, which I really don't think anyone necessarily expected. I think people thought they would take a step forward in the group stage. I think they thought that the team would look different under Emma Hayes. I think people were excited to see this new attack. I think they were excited to see sort of a very different defense than they saw in the World Cup, maybe different approach. We thought maybe things would be a little bit wider or a little bit more end to end. Group stage, massive success for them. Massive, massive, massive success for the United States. It's the first time they've gotten all 9 points since 2012, which, as people recall, is the last time they won an Olympic gold medal. That front 3 of Sophia Smith, Mallory Swanson, and Trinity Rodman has been the runaway success of the entire tournament so far. I think maybe it's like 1 is the front 3 of the United States, and 2 is just like Canada's unwillingness to quit. I think those are like the 2 big motions here. And that, I think, you put on Hayes and you put on the players. I think it's a testament to that front 3 that they're playing so well so quickly. For as much as those players have been worked into the United States system, they have not gotten that much time together. Hayes has been drilling it hard. She has started that same front 3 in every game. That was a little bit controversial maybe in today's game against Australia, because they had already qualified for the quarterfinals. There was this feeling of, shouldn't they rotate to save legs? Hayes is going all in on this starting 11, the one that we saw in the game against Zambia, in the game against Germany. And then there was one change in this particular match where Emily Sonnet replaced Tierra Davidson, where people might recall she left the Germany game with an injury that was reported out to be a knee contusion, which is like a good news, bad news situation. A knee contusion is certainly much better than anything internal. But anytime you have significant swelling in a knee, you never know when it's going to go down, and you never know when it's going to be ready for a heavy running load again. So hopefully that's soon for the United States, but not necessarily the case. They still are without Jaden Shaw, who has not yet returned to the roster after being replaced temporarily by Croy Bethune. They had Emily Sams move off the alternate list onto the Olympic roster, or the Olympic 18 today, in the place of Davidson. They're limited. I mean, all of this is sort of some of the same analysis as the game against Zambia or the game against Germany, but the lack of rotation from Hayes, I think, was a gamble in this third game for a number of reasons. You get concerned, a team like Australia, like they've been playing these wide open shootouts. Is the United States going to have to run and run and run and run, and they're going to be exhausted for their quarterfinal? I think that's concern number one. They had 2 players on yellow cards going into this match, which were Trinity Rodman and Sam Coffey. And sort of the 2 strikes and you're out rule of yellow cards in the Olympics is you get 2 accumulative yellow cards and you have to sit out the next game. And I believe that resets after the quarterfinals. So that's a risk as well. You risk losing a player for the knockout rounds. And then also you just risk not utilizing that depth. Are there impact players who can come off of the bench? Is this, in starting the same group over and over again, are you just sort of running this into the ground until the wheels fall off, right? I think some of those fears actually ended up being unfounded because of the way that Australia played. And we will talk about the big gamble and sort of the big loss of that approach. But the fitness element, I think, turned out not to be a big deal at all because Australia came out very conservatively. Like I said, they'd been very leaky in the back in the first 2 games. They had been able to score against Zambia, but they were not able to score against Germany. The US's defense has been on sort of this bend but not break. I think that they are still kind of pretty difficult to score on, even if sometimes they have their touchy moments. So Australia comes out in a 5-back. At times, the U.S. is in possession in this game, and they've got 11 players behind the ball. Or if they're progressing, I mean, I called it a low block at the beginning. I'm not sure it's technically a low block. It was more of like a mid block, but it was so compact, all predicated on not giving the United States room to work. It seemed like Australia kind of had learned that lesson of the Zambia game, which is that they needed to get at least a point to get through. And the way they were going to do it is they were going to not let the United States score first. Now, the U.S. obviously had their issues kind of breaking that block down. But again, when you've got like 7 or 8 players behind the ball consistently, I don't know what exactly you're supposed to do. And the U.S. obviously did not need a win, though they did push for one. And I think actually that breakthrough at the end of the first half, which was scored by Trinity Rodman off of a corner kick, is the exact way to do that. We have not seen the United States rely on set pieces much so far in this tournament. They haven't really had to, but it is kind of a good failsafe when you're looking at a block like that, where basically the other team's first approach is just not to let you score. We didn't really see them utilize that well against Costa Rica in their send-off game. I mean, that was one of the criticisms, not being able to score off of that low block. I was thinking when I was watching this game, and Australia was sort of in this block, and they were getting stuck in, and they were being very physical, but they weren't even really presenting much going forward on the counter because they were afraid of getting stretched. And I just went, I think the U.S. just might have to punt for corner kicks here. Obviously, you're trying to kind of break the lines, you're trying to get that right angle, but in those tight spaces, I think you just generate as many corners as you can, and you try to punch it in on set pieces, and that's exactly what they did, and they get the breakthrough at the end of the first half. They go up 2-0 with a goal from distance from substitute Corman Albert. And then the subbing starts to happen, and that's where you see why Hayes has been sticking with this starting 11 for so long. Is just they lack the ability to hold on to the tempo of the game, to the control of the game, and also, to be fair, Australia started pushing very hard in the final 20 minutes, which leads us to the subbing conundrum for the United States that they find themselves in now. So let's go back to the yellow card issue. I don't think I'm telling anybody who listens to this show something they don't already know. This is one of the biggest things that came out of this game, is that Sam Coffey goes into this game on a yellow card. No rotation. She's being asked to play through the game on the yellow. She gets her second yellow, her second accumulative yellow in the first 4 minutes of the game. It's her first tackle. It's her first approach on the ball, and it's a little bit late, and it's a little bit heavy, and it's an earned yellow card. It was a perfectly fine call, and now she's going to miss the quarterfinal as the only holding midfielder on the U.S. roster. Saw criticism for Hayes, certainly, in not rotating. I think it was a gamble. I think we've seen coaches kind of gamble on either end. It did show a lack of confidence, like I said, in the depth of the team as it stands, whether it's through just sort of cohesion or through injury issues, that she did not rotate. She didn't want to give this game up to Australia, which was in and of itself a little bit conservative of her. And she takes the gamble, and Coffey makes the mistake. I don't think it's unreasonable for Hayes to tell her starting defensive midfielder, hey, you're on a yellow, don't get another one. We're anticipating them letting us be on the ball a lot. The U.S. dominated possession. They did not have pressure on the ball again until the final 20 minutes of the game. Just be smart. Don't do anything crazy. Don't get that yellow. Or if you have to, make it because they're on a breakaway and they're about to score. Coffey doesn't do that. Coffey comes into the game and immediately gets an unnecessary yellow where the player that she fouls is in their own half. They're not even really on the turn yet. It was just unnecessary. It was an unnecessary foul, and I think it shows maybe some of the inexperience that Coffey has as a starting midfielder for this team, which is obviously fair because she's not very experienced as a starting midfielder for this team and certainly not in a major tournament. It was a mistake. It was a mistake by a young player in their first tournament of this size, but it's a big one. It didn't end up being an issue for the game itself. I'm glad that Hayes ultimately left Coffey in. I mean, if you're going to have someone kind of run the burners, have it be the player that isn't going to be able to play in the next game. But Coffey had another bad tackle at about the 55th minute of the game. And I thought to myself, geez, is she about to get herself ejected and suspended for longer? It was just kind of a rough day at the office for Coffey. And it is significant that she is going to be missing this quarterfinal against Japan. Now, not to do this, but I'm going to do this. Success in the group stage, as awesome as it is in the Olympics, does not necessarily always guarantee success. I went back on this a couple weeks ago, last week, forget exactly. There's the magic game. The quarterfinal is the magic game. You win your quarterfinal, you're playing for a medal no matter what, right? You win your quarterfinal, Coffey's coming back, right? You're going to maybe get some injured players back. You're going to be able to continue to grow through this tournament. You lose this game, you're out. This is one of the most make or break moments of the entire tournament. The U.S. is not particularly deep at this position with this roster. They're going to have to pull a player out of position. They're either going to have to pull Haran into the number 6. They're either going to have to hope that Davidson is healthy enough to play center back so they can push Emily Sonnet up into the number 6. They might have Corbin Albert in there trying to do a variety of different things. I'm not entirely sure. And it's going to disrupt not only their ability to generate turnovers and possess the ball, but also, again, just tempo. Japan pounces on you. Japan makes you pay for mistakes so quickly. And they were not particularly clinical at the beginning of this tournament on the counter, but they certainly are now. This is a big loss. It doesn't feel like one because she wasn't immediately ejected, right? But it's a big, big deal. And you just hope that it doesn't become the one mistake that can define this tournament if the United States does get eliminated in the quarterfinals. Because for all of the good stuff, for every good thing that they did, we're about to go into the really weird part of this tournament in a particular year where it's already been very weird and we have seen results that we were not expecting. Japan plays very good at the end of games. They did it to Brazil in their second game. They come back to win 2-1. They put the Jets on against Nigeria late in their game today. The United States struggles to see games out, even though they've gotten positive results, is going to be an issue. The lack of cohesion with substituting is going to be an issue. And just not having a player as sturdy as Coffey has been. She's done really well in this tournament so far. You just don't want this mistake to define that. And so there's still a lot of question marks, I think, going into this quarterfinal. Now, the positive, I would say, and this is why I think U.S. fans should still feel very confident going into this, is ultimately you have to score more than the other team to win, and no one has been able to do that to the United States in this tournament. They are scoring at ease. They are pushing the ball forward really well. I don't necessarily think, or I hope, that not having Coffey won't disrupt that too much, though they're going to have to keep calm heads in that midfield, and that's where I get worried about a player like Albert, who has looked really green in this tournament, despite the nice strike from distance today. And you just got to score. You score first. You know, I think teams are going to, you talk about sort of that fear element. I do think that teams are going to be a little bit conservative against the United States early because of how well they've been scoring early in games. And you just figure out ways to get your spacing right in the defense, and you trust that you're going to be able to win through your attack. And I think that's a good bet for the United States. So I think that's where U.S. fans should feel confident. But I do also think that this is in danger of being a turning point for what has otherwise been a spectacular Olympics so far for this team. So, you know, a measured praise today maybe, but high praise for the group stage overall. Like I said, I'm not too worried about fitness concerns. I would expect Emma Hayes to run out the exact same front line, probably the exact same defense. Maybe you switch someone like Dunn and Niswanger depending on how they're feeling. But the midfield is the big question mark, as it has been from the very beginning of this tournament. So yeah, I just want to say kudos to the United States for putting together something really, really nice. I think if you're looking at odds on like favorites, who has the momentum going into this knockout stage, I would say Spain, I would say the United States, and I would actually say Canada. And I think that those three teams are going to be the ones that make it, that should at this point, I believe, make it through that quarterfinal into the semifinal rounds, which would be really fascinating to see kind of how those medal rounds match up. And we will talk about that then. That is on Saturday, the quarterfinal round. Again, Magic. It's Magic number day. It's Magic game day. Win and you're in, losing you're out. I hope everyone has been enjoying the group stage thus far. It's been really, really fun. And we will have more for you. We've got more coming on the JWS YouTube channel. We've got more coming from the JWS newsletter. We're on TikTok. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. Follow us on all of our different channels. It's been kind of really fun to see things grow in this Olympics and follow the storylines that everyone's really excited about. Like, not to do tangents, but like rugby, the U.S. rugby team winning bronze, or watching Katie Ledecky in the 1500 meter, or, you know, just any of these different things. I'm just like thinking about today, where I'm watching U.S. volleyball, you know, have to almost give up, you know, this game against Serbia, and they come back to win the match, or watching the water polo team try to go for their 4th straight gold, watching the basketball team go for their 8th straight gold. It's been so fun so far, and I hope everyone is enjoying it as much as I am. And we will be back with a soccer exclusive late sub this weekend, and then you can count on us being back at our normal time on Monday to talk through everything else. So this has been YouTube exclusive version of the late sub. I'm your host, Claire Watkins. Shout out to producer extraordinaire Parker Fenton, and we will see you next time.